the only show that has 3 dimensions of Leatherface in space. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was directed by Tobe Hooper once again, who directed the original 74 film, and this time around, an all-new cast of people. This time, the only people that return from the original movie, of course, is Jim Satos as the cook, who you find out in this movie, his name is Drayton Sawyer. The movie is a sequel to the original 74 film, but it's actually is a different in tone and in location. I will elaborate more on this in my review, but I did do today a collaboration with Rashad. Rashad, thank you so much for doing this review for me, and let's hear his thoughts on the movie, then we'll hear mine.
Jacob, what's the deal? Pickles is everything kosher, so thank you for inviting me to revisit a horror classic, I guess you can call it that, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 / Love and Chainsaws, because this is probably one of the first or only slasher movies that has the slasher falling in love. That's right, Leatherface finds love in this movie and professes his love as only he can. So yeah, so Jacob, I'm assuming you went into the whatever plot this movie has and everything. I just want to say that this is a dumb movie, but it's camp, it's fun, it's pure entertainment. This is Slasher 101, you know what I mean? And this is what you go to see a slasher movie for, to see slashing and guts and blood and stupid, crude humor. This is what the 80s was all about. Directed by Tobe Hooper, and Tobe Hooper also directed the first movie, but the first movie was definitely a horror masterpiece. Like, that's up there with some of the best, right? I don't know how the hell he went from that to this, you know what I mean? Like, cocaine's a hell of a drug. This was made in the 80s, definitely a product of the 80s, because there's no way a sober person directed this movie. And I'm going to take it a step further. There's no way that the same guy that directed this movie directed Poltergeist. There is no way. Word on the street is that Steven Spielberg directed that, but that's a video for another day. Yes, y'all, Leatherface finds love in a DJ named Stretch, where him and Chop Top, his brother, go to the radio station to kill her because she's putting the Sawyer family on blast because these 2 bodies end up missing that definitely deserved it. But she's hell-bent on taking down the Sawyer family and teams up with Dennis Hopper, who is obsessed with this family. Well, he comes across as an investigative reporter, but then he becomes an assassin because he goes to the chainsaw store and buys like a whole bunch of chainsaws to do the job, okay? And this is probably the only movie that you'll ever see with the all-out chainsaw fight. I haven't seen anything before or since then. Yo, this movie had it all right? You have a chainsaw fight, you have a slasher love story, you have some disgusting kills, and a couple of genuine jump scares, which I'm really not a fan of jump scares, but this jump scare scared the shit out of me when Chop Top and the DJ lady was talking, and Leatherface comes out of the black and just, like, I said, oh shit, like it felt like 3D up in my face. Yeah, this movie had it all, and it's dumb. It's just dumb, fun entertainment. Okay, so if I put my critic hat on and say what's wrong with the movie, first of all, it's an hour and 40 minutes, and you feel the runtime because the scenes are stretched way too long. I feel like they could have shortened a lot of scenes and gave us a couple more bodies because another thing that I find wrong with this movie is that there was not enough bodies. It's an hour and 40 minutes. I think I only counted 3 bodies. That's not good. Okay, a movie like this, there needs to be a kill every like 5 or 6 minutes, all right? So say what you want about the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that came out. A lot of people criticize it. That's fine. But I got my money's worth because bodies hit the floor. It's called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Give us a massacre with the chainsaw in Texas. That's what I want. Only 3 bodies and a lot of bad jokes. So in a lot of ways, even as bad as this movie is, it's supposed to be so bad it's good. But still, I'm like, damn, if they could have just trimmed down some of those scenes and gave us some more kills, this would have been a perfect fun slasher movie. I've only seen this chainsaw movie in part 1 and then the new one that came out. I haven't watched the other ones yet, so I gotta get on those. But this one is definitely the most fun out of the ones that I've seen. But I still prefer the new chainsaw that just came out just because the bodies hit the floor. Leatherface was not playing. He was a joke in this movie. He wasn't even scary. Besides that jump scare, Leatherface was not scary at all. He was a buffoon. He was a clown. He was, I don't want to, well, what's the PC way to say it? He was not right, okay? He wasn't right in the head. And he was a cartoon. He was a cartoon caricature of what we know from the first movie. But still, I do recommend it only if you are drinking or if you have to smoke a blunt. That's it and that's all. So Jacob, thank you for having me on this video, bro. I hope I didn't go too long. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a good time. Recommend it. Giving it the Rashad G reviews grade. I give it a C. I give it a solid C. Can't give it anything else above that just because of how bad it is. But it is a fun time. That's it and that's all. The floor is yours, homie.
Thanks, Rashad. I can't wait to collab on you with more videos. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was once again directed by Tobe Hooper, who directed the original '74 film. The movie is a direct sequel to the original movie, even though really it's a soft sequel. Like, it's one of those sequels that doesn't necessarily go into the right direction of the first movie. It's like, you know, a soft sequel. Kind of like how Force Awakens is a sequel to Return of the Jedi, even though most of the characters are new. Kind of like that. Or, you know how, like, First Contact is a sequel to, like, the Generations, even though most of the original cast of the original series of Star Trek are not in First Contact. Kind of like that. The movie itself, you know, like, the only people to really return from the original movie is, of course, Jim Satos as the cook, and, of course, director Tobe Hooper, who only signed on to this movie if he could do something different than what he did before, because he didn't want to just make another horror film. He wanted to make it camp, because apparently around that time period in the 80s, people were just making campy horror films. I think it was really Evil Dead 2 that really started the trend, or maybe Stephen King's movies that started the trend, where every movie basically had to be campy, and it really is kind of weird that it started out this way, because a lot of good movies actually started out being like, you know, straight up soft, and then of course, like, you know, straight up horror and soft horror kind of rose that way. Like, for instance, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street started off really strong, then it became camp, and then of course, Jason and Chucky and all these other horror franchises kind of followed suit. Leatherface as well. And the studio, of course, who greenlit the movie was like, we thought we were going to get a straight horror film because it's Tobe Hooper. He directed Salem's Lot, the original '74 film, and awesome. It's unknown if he directed, if he directed Poltergeist, because it's rumored Steven Spielberg did it, but that's, you know, a note for another day. And so they're like, all right. And so, of course, he signed on to direct it, but he had different intentions. He was going to, like, I want to make a comedy. Like, I wanted to make a dumb comedy. And so, of course, they made the movie, and then, of course, they hated it. So then they tried to recut, reshoot, and stuff, and it still just came out the same way. And a lot of people come out and saw it when it first came out. People thought it was garbage. They're like, it's not a very good movie. And I had the original impact as well. I saw the movie when I saw a clip when I was a kid, and then when I was a teenager, I finally saw the whole movie, and I did not like it. I thought it was terrible. In fact, I was like, this is not a very good movie. This is really terrible. And I thought, like, it was bad. In fact, I actually enjoyed the third film more because at the time I saw the second film, I felt like the third film wasn't as cheesy. But then as an adult, I now grow to appreciate this movie because it's very cheesy, but it's Tobe Hooper's conclusion to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And that's one reason why I love it. Like, there are a lot of bad things you can say about this movie, but I'm going to tell you some good things about it. One, there is a Texas Ranger in the movie that, you know, in the first movie there was no characters in the movie that you can relate to. They're basically just meat to be slaughtered. Like, you know, and so with the second one, they actually do have some different characters that they kind of changed up with. Like Stretch, she is, you know, like a disc jockey, and she has a cool personality that, you know, like a punk rock chick. And then you have this like Texas Ranger who's on a hellbent revenge against the Sawyers, and you have like, you know, this cool like DJ who's like in love with Stretch. But, you know, he doesn't want to, like, get in her way, but at the same time, he's really protective. Almost like it's either, I don't know if it's really he's in love with her, or if he's just, you know, he's just like a big brother to her, or, you know, it never really implies what it implies, you know. And then you have, like, you know, the cook, and then you have one of the best characters of the movie, who is played by Bill Moseley as Chop Top, who's supposed to be a twin brother to the hitchhiker who was killed in the first movie. Well, apparently in this movie, you know, Chop Top is he like chews up the scenery when he needs to, but at the same time, you know, he is on point to where it's like, he's kind of terrifying because he just loves to kill. And, you know, you have a backstory about him being in Vietnam, and that's kind of why he's all messed up in the head. You know, I mean, I guess, and he has a metal plate in his head from that, and he scratches it with a clothes hanger, and he has a lighter, and he burns the clothes hanger so he can scratch his head, and it's really clever. And he also carries around his dead brother with him, and just, it's really weird. But it's also kind of funny. I will say this. I did love the chainsaw fight at the end. There's a great chainsaw fight sequence at the end between Leatherface and the Texas Ranger that I thought was great. And I really did like that, you know, there is one scene in the movie that's really ridiculous, though, where the Texas Ranger comes in, he's going to try to tear it all down because he sees the wheelchair with Franklin in it from the first movie, and then he wants to tear it down, the whole place, and then they see him, and then they try to, and like literally the cook just pulls out money and says, how much to bribe him? And I'm like, what would have happened if he would have took that money? Like, seriously, what would have happened? I was thinking, if he takes that money, it's the stupidest movie ever. If he takes money and leaves and that's it, I'm like, it's the stupidest movie ever, but he doesn't. And he literally, because he wants revenge, he wants to kill that family. And this movie wasn't intentionally meant to end the series. Like how John Carpenter imagined Halloween 2 to end the series. He wanted, Tobe Hooper wanted Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, because at the end, they all die. Every single one of them die at the end. And that was originally what it was meant to be. And then it wasn't until like New Line got the rights to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, they're like, oh, no, he's not dead. He's back. Leatherface, the whole family's dead, but he's back. Maybe Grandpa's life, we don't know. But yeah, this is like literally that though. Like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was meant to be a conclusion, even though it wasn't a strong conclusion, but it was still a conclusion. And I feel like it was much stronger than, say, we got Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, or even 3. But I will say 2, I think, is much stronger because it was made by the original creator of Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I will say that he even has a cameo in the movie as like at the hotel when Stretch goes to see a Texas Ranger. He literally is the guy that throws his can of Dr. Pepper at these other people that are, you know. And I was like, hey, it's Tobe Hooper. He's wearing like a hat too. And I was like, and so yeah, the movie was meant to be more of a comedy in a way. And he has said that, you know, people didn't get it at first, and that was kind of why like a lot of backlash from it. Was because, I mean, usually a 74 film is a straight-up horror film. Just like with Evil Dead, I say. Evil Dead was a straight-up horror film, and then the second one, but there was no hidden campy notes in Evil Dead. Versus Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there really wasn't no campy notes, really. And so I think when he did that, people were kind of blindsided because they were like, wait. In fact, if you even watch the trailer just shows people like being terrified, and it's like it's 10 seconds of footage. Shows people being terrified, and you're just like, oh, this could be good. And then you see the movie, you're like, that's why there's only 10 seconds of footage, because if you show the whole clip, people would have been like, this is really campy and cheesy. And so, I mean, it's easier to get away with that back in the 80s compared to now, where you're gonna know. And so, I think this movie is not terrible, but it's not great. Like, I really like the first one very much. Like, the first one, I think it's a great indie film. It's not my favorite Texas Chainsaw, but I think this one is much better to compare to some. And I will say that I like that it ends the series. It doesn't just leave it off for another film. In fact, there's even a shot at the end when all the family dies. Like, if you watch it, parallels to the ending of the original movie, where at the end, Sally just gets away. Well, at the end, she takes the chainsaw and kills, you know, Chop Top. And so at the end, it implies that when she's waving a chainsaw, similar to what Leatherface waves a chainsaw, to where it's implying that, you know, she's good. Like, okay, like the female that got away now is the survivor. Is, you know, that Leatherface is gone, the family's gone, the chainsaw is no longer their power. She has the power of the saw. Like, it's metaphoricalized kind of how, like, evil is dead and good prevailed over evil. And that's kind of what this is, because the family is the villains of the story. And Leatherface, I will say, I did not like the way they hornerized Leatherface. Like, he's very horny, like, dry humps his chainsaw, and he has a crush on women, which they make him kind of really creepy. And it kind of gets really creepy when he rubs his chainsaw against a woman's leg. I thought, well, it's kind of creepy. You know, he's not really a sexual being, so he's just, you know, like, wears people's faces for fun. And also, I didn't like the new design. Compared to Gunnar Hansen's design, this guy's design, which I understand he didn't do this movie, Gunnar Hansen. He said, I don't know why. There's multiple reasons. Like, he either said, oh, I didn't like the script, or, oh, it was a pay dispute, or, oh, it was because he wasn't an actor, that really, and it just, there was a big dispute over it, and no one really knows the true story. But I will say, I miss him, because in this movie, this guy, I just did not like him as Leatherface, and I didn't like the design. I felt like he almost looked like an Addams Family member rather than a, you know, Leatherface from horror. I wasn't even terrified of him. I mean, even the scene where he comes out the vault with the chainsaw, I thought that was kind of you know. But, like, I will say there are some good sequences, like the on the road sequence where, like, the truck's chasing those hipsters with a chainsaw. That was pretty cool. Or I thought the radio station sequence was really great, and I also liked the chainsaw battle. Yeah, those are 3 really great sequences that kind of pinpoint the movie really well. I do not like this movie as much as some people do. I know some people are like, oh, this is my favorite Chainsaw movie. I get that if it is, but it's just not my favorite. I do think that there are some highlights that Tobe Hooper did try with. Like, he didn't just half-ass this movie. He did try on some parts. Like, he did want to make a powerful Texas Ranger character. He did try to make a powerful female character, because I know a lot of people complained in the original movie that Sally was just like, all she did was fall down, and then she moved her head around and screamed and everything else going, ah! And I understand he worked that cast to death to where it did feel like hell to them. And this one I felt like he had much of a bigger budget, so he didn't have to work them as much. But I still feel like he did keep them in that state to where it's like, yeah, this is pretty gruesome. But at the same time, he actually knew where to go compared to other Chainsaw filmmakers who I feel like don't understand the character as well as he did. So even though I feel like they didn't do Leatherface's justice as well, I feel like they got the other characters right to where it needed to be. And that's why I say the acting was pretty good on some parts, but some parts it was like, it feels like on the villains they kind of like went campier with it, but on like the heroes they kind of stayed like they kind of stayed good with it. Although there is one sequence with the Texas Ranger where he's got the chainsaw and he's cutting up and he's just freaking out with the chainsaw, and I'm like, okay, this guy's a little nutty. But you know, at the same time, I get it. And I will say, if I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a solid C+.